Ring around a rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Now, this classic nursery rhyme was really a song that they would sing to mimic a chilling description of a bubonic plague. This was an outbreak often referred to as Black Death. Now, this plague wiped out half of Europe's population. Similar to our pandemic that we recently experienced, we saw doctors and nurses wearing protective gear to try and escape from being the next victim. Okay, now Ring Around the Rosies is said to describe the rosy red rash that would appear on the plague victims. These patients would get buboes or boils underneath the armpit and groin area or the neck, lymph nodes that would spread. And these boils are said to be as large as apples. Now, these plague doctors' features we will discuss, but first let's take a look and discuss how the plague spread so rapidly. According to reports, they say that the rat rodents are the culprits who spread the disease. The rats went from China and then they made their way on board ship vessels into the European nation. And when there were no more rodents to blame, the ship then focused towards fleas that had allegedly bit the rats, infected. The infected fleas then would transfer the disease and bite unsuspecting citizens. Now, the swollen lymph nodes that were large as chicken eggs on the neck and the under the arm regions were very tender and they were extremely warm to the touch. Patients would exhibit fever, chills, headache, fatigue, muscle aches, but it doesn't stop there. A cough that is often seen with blood in it, with whether it was a dry cough or a mucus filled cough, it would splatter black blood stains in the area of the victim. Shortness of breath was also present, diarrhea, nausea. Patients became extremely weak as well, and some would often have internal bleeding. Okay, so they would bleed into the skin, which is why most plague doctors practice bloodletting. And I can continue on forever in regards to the symptoms, but it's just so many, just too many to actually list. I'd be listing symptoms for the entirety of the video. Intolerance to light, shivering, the inability to sleep. I mean, it goes on and on. But due to all of the symptoms that I had mentioned, they gave the plague many variations of existence, like pneumonic plague, septicemic plague, and bubonic plague, which all led to the same Black Death. The bodies piled up in the streets and gave off such a bad stench that it was thought that the smell was the actual cause of the outbreak. And the pocket full of posies sung in the nursery rhyme were dried bouquet of flowers that survivors would actually walk around carrying these dried up roses and such to mask out the smell of decaying flesh. Okay, now the plague doctors, they had a respirator that contained an array of aromatic fragrances, if you will, and the items were stuffed inside of their beak-like mask, and they would hold lavender, peppermint, camphor, or vinegar sponge. Also, some plague doctors had juniper berries, cloves, myrrh, and even storax. Okay, so they would try to hoard away miasma, or the most toxic of the smell. Now, these doctors believed that the smells would prevent infection, so that's why they had a beak full of posies. Okay, and comforting and surviving, or comforting the survivors of families of the victims didn't seem to provide much relief, but some of the doctors were often more carefree with wealthier clients because it offered them a sense of relief as far as the environment, because it was said to be a little bit more sanitized than the poorer communities. Okay, now I want to talk to you about the most bizarre symptom yet. And it's also seen within the European communities or nations till this day. And that's a complete blackening of the tissue, which is alleged to be due to gangrene. Now, some say that this happened if a flea bit the victim's nose or hand or toes, and that this would happen. The tissue would die, because tiny blood clots formed in the body, and this was the septicemic version of the plague. However, I feel that in regards to gangrene and that sort of thing, it was a little bit more deeper than that, if you will. So let us discuss, and we'll get into that, okay, a little bit later on in regards to, the actual the blackening of the body parts, okay? So, but I want to just talk about for a moment the fact that um, it was said that Jews were actually to blame for the actual poisoning of wells, okay? So during that time, there were talks of Jews spiking the wells or the drinking water of the people, which had ended up leading to a massive killing spree of the Jews, okay, at the stake. And even in 1321, they were accused of hating all people and being the very plague that they actually spread. Okay, so ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The ashes were said to represent the burning of the bodies that would take place not in designated areas but all over the actual cities, okay? And let's talk a little bit about the rest of the plague doctor's outfit, if you will, okay? They wore a long ankle length coat, and it was an overcoat, so the gear can be traced back to Italy or France as the original construction. Black boots, gloves, a black wide brim hat was worn with a linen hood, and a walking stick was used to examine patients and keep people at a distance, okay? And it gives new light to give me 6 feet, okay? Now, I want to talk about how this plague actually spread, okay? And this wouldn't be a Girl Code video if I didn't start to introduce doubt into the original story told to us regarding what truly could have been the case, okay? Now, many people weren't biting from the rat trap that was laid, and neither do I. So, I want to talk about the way the plague was actually spread, if you will, or how it ended up coming into introduction, if that makes any sense, okay? So, in other words, they had said that the plague was actually introduced through following postal routes of those days. So it started over in Mongolia and China. And so from Asia Minor into Western Europe and then north to England, then it traveled back eastward into Poland. And then it went into Russia before lollygagging towards the barbarians. Okay. And so, you know, but in my opinion, it was entirely impossible for such a deadly disease to be spread just by rats alone, especially among populations that were affected, because lots of people in certain countries had no rats or fleas in their communities. And people that were affected who had never seen a rat or a flea one time in their entire life, as an example, Iceland. People in Iceland spoke of Europeans reporting capturing dead rats, and they truly did doubt this particular story because they had never seen a rat where they were from. So, what I'm thinking, what could spread a universal pestilence so quickly other than water, other than wells? All right. I mean, we were told that in 2020 that our pandemic was spread because of bats. We were told that these horseshoe bats were in a wet market right? And that the story was that's how, our pandemic of our day came into play. So keep your eye on March 2020 because that was the year of the rat. And 1620 was also the year of the rat when the bubonic plague came into play. All right. Now, as I push forward in this video, I'm going to show you some surprising alchemical elements in the Chinese zodiac. Okay. And you tell me, do you think that these were planned attacks or do you believe that this was just a natural occurrence? Okay. So we'll take a look at this together. And for the record, no one can come along and fact check me regarding, us collaborating prior plagues and unfolding what recently happened here in the Americas because Americans do deserve the truth. All right. If we don't have the truth on our current state of affairs, we'll accept the descriptions of the past experiences. So we need to have a truthful, powerful account of what's been happening continuously every 100 years. All right, this is real life. This is not a nursery rhyme. Okay, so it was horseshoe bats in 2020, and we were told that it was created in nature. Then we were told it was created in a lab, and then we were told it was our fault that we weren't washing our hands, we weren't covering our face, or so being blamed for a pandemic, you want to try to figure out what's happening or what has happened so that it doesn't continue to happen. Okay, now as far as the truth, sometimes the truth, we can search for it, but what we realize is that the truth will never ever change. Okay, so let's talk about the cholera plague. They suggested that you don't drink water or drink alcohol, okay, because they say that this was a contamination. The water and the alcohol was contaminated. And this started in Ganges Delta, okay? Ganges Delta is a river in South Asia. Again, we have an Asian community said to have started this particular cholera plague, all right? And then it went into Bangladesh. And, this was about the 7th pandemic at this time, okay? So that's the cholera plague. Then we have the typhoid or the typhoid plague, okay? Typhoid plague, this was a 30-year long plague, okay? And this had acute diarrhea illness caused by intestinal infections, okay? And they say that, this had actually spread from human feces or human waste piled up in courtyards, and it had overflowed and became this cesspool. And they blamed a lady and they called her Typhoid Mary. Okay, so we have Typhoid Mary, and she had come here from Ireland, and she would cook for families, and shortly after she would leave, these families would become deathly ill and really sick, and they wanted to get to the bottom of how this was happening. It's really an interesting story about typhoid or Typhoid Mary, and you can look that up whenever you get a chance. So those are the two more recent plagues that we have, had here within, this time period from which I can remember. All right, and it really does make you think as you go further back. You'll start to see that all of these plagues are coming in the year of the rat, okay, 2020, but there are different elements as it relates to which particular year it is. Currently we are in the year of the rabbit, okay? So this year, 2023, we are actually in the year of the rabbit. And so let's get into a little bit of the alchemy so we can understand exactly what's going on here. Now, before I tell you about the alchemical elements of China and how they've been controlling the world with them, let me give you a stark reminder, family, that our Father enthroned in heaven has everything over and under control. Okay, we see the kings of the earth, all the wicked rulers have band together against the Lord and against the anointed ones like us, family. But let me just break down a few things really quick, okay? So I want you all to understand that this is the tribulation. We are in the tribulation, okay? And we're going to see some tumultuous times. We're going to see some uncertainty. We're going to see some disasters. This is warfare, right? And we're even going to see death. But it's also a time where we're going to see divine judgment. It's on its way, okay? So Psalm verse 2, chapters 2 through 6. For those that wish to take and hold us under captivity, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all of that, they won't be able to win over the chosen. Okay, so now, because ultimately, they're fighting really against God. Okay, and when I say they, I want you to understand who China is. China is the beast in the east. Okay, China is the beast that's spearheading this conquest. All right, now we've already seen 5.5 bowls of judgment be poured out for 3.5 years, just like Revelation 16 talks about. So go ahead and check that out, family. And this vast demonic army that wants to destroy a third of mankind is actually China. Okay, now let me know if you feel otherwise. Let me know up under the section where we comment at whatever you're thinking. If this is not China, I would love to know your thoughts on it. All right, but let me just say, if I can, that the kings that are coming from the east and who will march into Israel to meet and greet the Antichrist will also include other regions like Hong Kong, Tibet, Taiwan, even the USA. Okay, so a lot of nations are going to gather together through and create like this enormous military strength, right? And we see China's aggressiveness all the way across the board. I mean, they're showing pure dominance on the world stage. I mean, China is really unmatched. Seriously, they're quiet and they're really demonic. Okay, so they're killing Chinese Christians, they're locking down entire cities, people are starving, they're dying of dehydration. I mean, so it's not hard to imagine that when characteristics like they have, they don't give a fuck about nobody's nations or other people's. Okay, they don't even care about their own. So if we look into Revelation verse 16, chapters 17 through 20, Revelations verse 19, chapters 11 through 21, you'll see that this demonic Antichrist army will be obliterated. They will be wiped out. Okay, but not before, of course, they try to wage war against God. Okay, so now the rest of the 5th and the 6th and the 7th bowls of judgment is coming like yesterday, like fast. Okay, so the battle of Armageddon, it can't be fought until the Euphrates River dries up, right? And we just saw that recently. Okay, and so China will gather the kings and the presidents to invade, okay, and go into Israel. All right, there will be a Chinese-led coalition. So these are the things that I want you to look out for, family. Okay, so we see that the Euphrates River has dried up, and so there's no longer a barrier, right? There's no longer a barrier present, so they will head westward and march inside of Israel. Okay, and after they cross the most violent earthquake ever to be felt will shake the world. Okay, so rejoice though, don't be afraid, okay, because we have nothing to worry about. All right, the battle is already won. Okay, the battle is already won. So we the people, we've already won the battle. And so, I'm going to get into the alchemy, but let me just explain to you really quick the differences between war and battle. Okay, now war, let's decode that. So the art of war is an intense armed conflict. It has certain characteristics that battles don't have, okay? So a war is fought with militaries, okay? Militaries are actually involved. Governments are actually involved. There's extreme violence that's felt, usually on both sides of a war, okay? Destruction, aggression that can last for months and years, as we've seen for the past 3.5 years. I'm sure it's been, a little bit longer, but from that which we can notice, 3.5 years, which is very biblical, it references the 3.5 years. And then, in addition to months and years, wars can actually last forever, okay? Just like we see with Israel. So until the proper heirs are restored to Israel, we'll never see peace over there in Israel. They'll never see peace. They'll never see a raindrop, okay? And we bear witness to all of these things, okay? So wars are very huge. They're very big. Now, a battle, these are fights that happen in specific locations at specific times with small little breakouts here and there. But, the combat remains real, okay, in a battle. But, just so that you understand, there will be casualties. This is why we have been seeing casualties on both sides of the battle, both sides of the war, okay? And most of us are generals in the spiritual realm. And then you've got digital soldiers, okay, on the little truth tube channels and whatnot, okay? So everybody is doing their part. There is no need to be afraid. Actually, we should be rejoicing in this moment, okay, family? So now let's talk about alchemy. I want you to understand that alchemy, they're magicians, and like any other practitioner, you can operate in the light or you can operate in the dark. And as far as what we can tell, we've been witnessing dark manipulation over a massive amount of people, okay? So it's important for the sake of this video to understand shadow magic, primordial manipulation, okay? So by the way, I want you to stay tuned because at the end of this video, I'm going to show you this dark manipulation happening in real time, okay? Dark matter manipulations. So anyhow, let's talk about this really quick, okay? You have the Philosopher's Stone, right? You have Truth Alchemy. You have Water and Ice. You have Fire and Mustangs. You have Blood Rune. You have Alchemy, okay? And then lastly, you have a Chimeric Alchemy, all right? So these are all of the different kinds of alchemy that you could actually practice. Now, it's important to understand, though, about Chinese alchemy, that on the surface, they're really talking about astrology, okay, and the important principles of yin and yang, okay, and how those concepts, they actually work, because their alchemical elements depend on the zodiac signs, all right? And it's not like that in the Western world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you how this works, because it's important to understand where we're at, okay? So it might sound a little strange, but I promise you'll get it, all right, if you don't already know. So there are 60 years that they call cycles, okay? Their 60-year cycles consist of 2 separate cycles interacting with each other, okay? The first is the cycle of 10 heavenly stems, or the 5 elements in perfect order, and that's wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, okay? And these are what you call yin and yang, okay? Dark and light, okay? So now how this works is, let me see, get me some notes. How this works is it traverses off of a lunar solar calendar, okay? So the years that end in even numbers are always yang, okay? Y-A-N-G. And the years that end in odd numbers are always yin, okay? So the cycle would look a little like this. If the year ends in 0, it's a yang metal, okay? If the year ends in 0, if the year ends in 1, it's a yin metal. If the year ends in 2, it's a yang water. If the year ends in 3, it's a yin water, okay? If the year ends in 4, it's a yang wood. If the year ends in 5, it's a yin wood. Okay, so if the year ends in 6, it's a yang fire. If the year ends in 7, it's a yin fire. Okay, so you get that. If the year ends in 8, it's a yang earth. If the year ends in 9, it's a yin earth. Okay, so yin and yang. Okay, I'll show some different still images where you could actually look along, okay? And so what's important to understand is that, they run off of animals as well, okay? And this could explain why, we saw so many different pandemics based off of animals. We had bird flus, we had swine flus, we had mad cow diseases, we had monkeypox, chicken pox, okay? Lots of Chinese elements match up with those exact years of those breakdowns, okay? And so the second cycle I want to talk about with the Chinese alchemy is the 12 zodiac animal signs, exactly in perfect order. Everything has to be in perfect order. So the elements as well, okay? So the wood, the fire, the metal, the water, that has to be in perfect order, okay? Now in the second cycle, as I just said, there are 12 zodiac animal signs, okay? And they're called earthly branches, and they need to be looked at in perfect order. So we have the rat, which is number 1, the ox 2, tiger 3, rabbit 4, dragon 5, snake 6, horse 7, goat 8, monkey 9, rooster 10, okay? 11 is dog, and 12 is pig, okay? And as a side note, in Vietnam, the rabbit is replaced by a cat. So, but the snake is always yin earth, okay? The snake is always yin earth. That was the 6th zodiac sign. And the dragon is always a yang metal, okay? So yin is actually considered negative, cold, dark, feminine, wet, okay? Yang is considered positive, bright, masculine, dry, and warm. So yin and yang literally means the dark side, okay? So you have the black and the white inside of the yin and yang symbol, the opposites of the world, dark and light, female and male, earth and heaven, death and birth, matter and spirit, okay? So the yin is the dark swirl associated with shadows, dark shadows, and, finger magic, and exactly what we have been witnessing of the practitioner.